You'd think a marriage ends with slammed doors or shouted words. Mine started unraveling because of a broken cabinet hinge. It was a quiet Sunday morning, sunlight filtering into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. I crouched down on the floor, screwdriver in hand, trying to fix the same damn hinge for the third time in a month. Each time the screws slid in, they gave up, like they were too tired to hold anything together. I knew the feeling. Behind me, Celeste was whispering again. She'd turned the hallway by the coat rack into her private confession booth, taking calls she never explained. I used to ask who it was, not anymore. There comes a point where you realize it's not that you're avoiding the answer's avoiding you. I gave up on the cabinet, grabbed my coffee, and sat at the table. The toast had gone cold. Truthfully, so had she. She drifted back into the kitchen with her face painted in casual smiles, kissed my cheek, and asked if I needed anything from the store. That was the script these days. Polite, normal, empty. But I noticed her makeup was done, hair styled, perfume too sharp, and the bag over her shoulder wasn't the grocery tote. It was the one she always took for her weekend retreats. Before I could reply, she jingled her keys and said, "I'll be back soon." Except she wouldn't, because this time I followed. Not like some private detective with binoculars. Just my old car trailing hers a few minutes behind. No plan, just the raw instinct that had been clawing at me for months. She didn't drive to the store. She didn't even try. Instead, she pulled into a driveway I didn't recognize, parked with the ease of familiarity, and walked up to the door like she lived there. No knock, no pause. Just walked in. I stopped half a block down, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. And then I saw him. Tall, button-down shirt. Hand sliding across her lower back like it belonged there. She looked up at him with a smile brighter than anything I'd seen at home in months. Then they kissed, and I didn't look away. Because the truth wasn't shattering. It was freeing. Celeste thought I'd be crushed, broken, begging. But in that moment, all I felt was a clarity that had been hiding from me for too long. That evening, she came home humming. Yes, humming like someone who had kissed another man in daylight and still believed she could walk back into my kitchen untouched. She dropped her bag on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and smiled at me like we were fine. I waited until her little show ended. Then, calmly, I said, "You don't have to lie anymore." The air froze. She turned to me, eyes narrowing like she hadn't heard correctly. "What are you talking about?" I repeated it, slower, quieter. "You don't have to lie. I followed you. I saw you." I know her skin paled. She tried to bluff. Saw me where? But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smash anything. I didn't give her the drama she could twist against me. "It's not what you think," she stammered. That lazy line every cheater rehearses. "You know what's worse than the kiss?" I asked. "It's the way you came home humming, like I'm just some background character in your real life." That landed. She sat down suddenly, whispering, "It wasn't supposed to be like this." That was the first honest thing she'd said in months. I didn't sit, couldn't, because if I sat, I might stay. And I was done staying in a story where I was just a placeholder until something better came along. "You're free now," I said, walking to the hallway closet. I pulled out the duffel bag I'd packed hours earlier. Her eyes widened. "Wait, what are you doing?" "I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to compete. I'm not going to be the safe option while you chase whatever thrill this is." She stood, her voice rising. "You can't just leave. We built a life together." I looked at her, really looked, and said, "You walked out of that life a long time ago. I'm just finally catching up." At the door, I paused for one last line. Not cruel, just true. "Tell him he can have the cabinet too. It's broken." Just like everything else, and then I left. And then I didn't drive home that night. Home wasn't mine anymore. It had stopped being mine long before I admitted it. Instead, I kept driving until the city lights thinned out into empty highway, pulling into a cheap motel I'd passed 100 times on business trips. Neon buzzed above the office window, the kind of flicker that made you wonder if it was trying to warn you. The woman at the front desk didn't ask questions. I paid in cash, gave a fake name, and took a room in the back where the road noise was faint. The carpet smelled like old cigarettes, and the fridge hummed like it was the only heartbeat in the room. I didn't bring much, just the duffel bag, my laptop, and the kind of restlessness that doesn't let you close your eyes. The first night alone wasn't peace. It was noise. Not from outside, but from inside my head, every memory replaying on a loop. Her humming as she walked in, the kiss in his driveway, the way she said, "It's not what you think." By morning, I wasn't rested, but I wasn't trapped either. That was something. She didn't call that day. Or the next. On the third morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. The first few voicemails sounded rehearsed. "Milo, we need to talk. Don't overreact." By message 7, her tone cracked. "Milo, please, it didn't mean anything. You're being dramatic." And the last one, cold as stone. "Where are you? What am I supposed to tell people?" That was all I needed to hear. It wasn't about me. It was about her story, her image. The performance mattered more than the truth. That night, the knock came. My chest tightened. No one knew I was here. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. Seth, the man from the driveway, the man whose hand had pressed against her back like it belonged there. He didn't yell, didn't sneer. He just stood in the hallway's dim yellow light and said, "She told me you left, that you gave up." I stared at him. "She left first." His brow furrowed. "She said you weren't stable, that she tried to hold it together for you." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how quickly she'd rewritten the script. In her version, she wasn't a cheater. She was a martyr. I started to shut the door, but then he said something that froze me in place. "You're not the first. I think she's done this before." The air thickened. My pulse hammered in my ears. He reached into his pocket and handed me something small, metallic. A flash drive. "She doesn't know I have this, but you should." Before I could ask anything else, he walked away, leaving me in the doorway with the tiny device burning a hole in my palm. For nearly an hour, I sat on the edge of the bed, turning it over between my fingers. Part of me wanted to throw it out the window, pretend none of this was real. But curiosity is cruel, and I needed answers, even if they ruined me. I plugged it into my laptop. 3 files, no labels, just raw timestamps. I clicked the first. It was our living room, our couch, our pillows. Celeste laughing, but not with me. She was with Seth, barefoot, wine glass in hand, wearing the sweatshirt I'd given her for Christmas, the one she said was too sentimental to wear outside. They kissed, slowly, like it wasn't new. In the background, I saw the wall clock, 4:23 p.m., the exact time I'd been stuck in traffic after picking up her dry cleaning. That was the night she told me she was working late. My stomach turned, but I clicked the second file. Different man, different night. This time it was someone older, her colleague. The one she once joked reminded her of her dad. They were on the same couch, his hand brushing her thigh as she laughed nervously, checking her phone. My contact name must have been lighting up her screen. I remembered that night. I called 3 times. She answered near midnight and snapped, "Stop being needy." I had believed her. I had blamed myself. Now I watched her ignore me in real time. I couldn't breathe. But I pressed play on the 3rd file. Not a video, audio, her voice. She was talking to another woman, maybe a friend. "Milo would never leave me," she said, laughing. "He's too soft. I could burn the house down, and he'd probably apologize for not handing me the matches fast enough." The sound of her laugh, it wasn't familiar. It was sharp, cruel, a sound meant to cut. I slammed the laptop shut and stood, pacing the room, gripping my head like I could squeeze the betrayal out. It wasn't just infidelity, it was contempt, mockery. For years I had told myself my patience was strength, my loyalty was love. But to her, It was weakness. A joke. I stopped pacing. My breath slowed. Something in me cracked. Not in despair, but in resolve. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to ask for closure. I wasn't going to let her turn this into another performance where I played the fool. Instead, I opened my laptop again. Not to watch, but to write. A record, a timeline. Every canceled dinner, every late night at the office, every excuse I swallowed like poison. I filled page after page, not to convince a court, but to convince myself, to see the truth without her distortion. By noon, I had 11 pages, and by the time I put the last period on that document, I knew something vital. Celeste hadn't just cheated. She had built her freedom on my silence, her thrills on my paycheck, her double life on my blind faith. That chapter was over, and for the first time in years, I was the one holding the pen. The next morning, the motel sunlight cut through thin curtains like a scalpel. I hadn't slept. The flash drive still sat on the nightstand, heavy despite its size. But I wasn't shaking anymore. I was steady. Instead of texting Celeste or answering her voicemails, I called someone else. A lawyer. His name was Victor Delgado, a man with calm eyes and a voice like sharpened steel. We met in his office that afternoon. I handed him the notes I'd written. 11 pages of dates, lies, excuses. I handed him the inheritance papers I'd found buried in an old drawer, proof she had signed my name without permission. And then, with hands that didn't tremble anymore, I gave him the flash drive. He skimmed the first pages, clicked one file, and stopped it halfway. Then he leaned back and said quietly, "You've been her safety net too long. Time to cut the ropes." Victor's advice was simple. Don't warn her. Don't fight on her stage. Act quietly, precisely. So I did. I froze the joint account before she could drain it. I transferred utilities into my name only. I scheduled new locks for the house and updated every password she had once known, not out of spite, out of survival. The next 48 hours were quiet. Too quiet. Then she found me. She showed up at the motel, room 19, in a crisp blouse and oversized sunglasses, perfume drifting in before she did. She knocked softly, said my name. Milo, not pet names, not soft manipulations. My name. I opened the door. She stepped inside, smaller somehow, the confidence stripped from her. She sat on the edge of a chair, not the bed, like she knew she no longer belonged. "I messed up," she began, then quickly added, "But you weren't perfect either." There it was, the backhanded apology. I almost smiled. "You felt invisible," she said. "You stopped noticing me." "You're right," I told her. "I stopped noticing you. After you started disappearing on purpose." She blinked. "I'm not here to fight," I continued. "And I'm not here to fix us. I'm here to end it." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tears welled. She whispered, "I thought you'd fight for me." I nodded. "That's the problem. You thought you could break me and I'd beg for the pieces?" I handed her a folder, divorce papers drafted and ready. Her name highlighted. No cruelty, just finality. She looked at them like they were written in another language. "I loved you," she murmured. "And you loved being loved," I said. Then I opened the door. She didn't leave right away, but eventually she did. And this time, I didn't watch her go. 3 days passed in silence. No calls, no emails, no desperate last-minute performance. Just absence. But in that absence, I felt something new. Control. Victor filed the divorce officially. I secured every asset that legally belonged to me, closed accounts, changed policies, sold the house quietly, fast, to a young couple who walked in holding hands, still believing in forever. I didn't tell Celeste. I didn't need to. When she finally did reach out, a week later, her words were as predictable as the sunrise. "Why didn't you tell me you sold the house?" I waited hours before responding, then typed one message. "You walked out thinking I'd beg." I walked out and never looked back. That house belonged to the man who waited for you. I'm not him anymore. Then I blocked her. Not in anger, in peace. 2 weeks later, I left the city. No dramatic farewell, no social media confessions. Just me, my car, a few clothes, some books, and a photograph of myself from before all of this, back when my smile wasn't something I had to fake. I drove to a coastal town I once passed on a road trip. Quiet streets, ocean air, a small apartment above a bookstore where the landlord gave me discounts if I helped shelve new arrivals. I work remotely now. I write in the mornings. I build puzzles on weekends. And sometimes, when I walk past the shore, I realize my chest isn't heavy anymore. Strangely, I don't think about her much. When her face drifts into memory, it feels like recalling a character from a book I outgrew. Not with hate, not even pain, just distance. And maybe that's the real ending. Closure doesn't arrive in apologies or explanations. It arrives the moment you decide the story is finished, and you deserve to write a new one. A few months later, I met someone. Lainey She teaches music at the community center and always forgets where she parked her car. She's not perfect. I'm not either. But she asks questions and actually waits for the answers. When I told her about Celeste, about the lies, the motel nights, the betrayal, she didn't pity me. She just said, "I'm glad you found your way out. So am I. I'm not writing this for her, not even for me. I'm writing this for whoever's sitting in silence right now, still holding the door open, hoping someone will turn back." Let me say it clearly. If they wanted to stay, they would have. You don't need to chase someone who walked away without tears. You don't need to shrink just to fit inside someone else's definition of love. You're allowed to leave quietly and still win. Because peace doesn't make noise, but you'll know it when you find it.